Alright, Olympus recorder log. I'm on the Brooklyn Promenade and I'm trying to take a time-lapse movie, but quite honestly, the way the little green light's supposed to blink, it hasn't been blinking the way it's supposed to blink, so I feel like I'm not gonna get it. I have that documentation anxiety that my technology is not working properly. Yes, the technology can save us. Interesting. It's possible. It's possible. It's our own version of chemical markers for communication. It seems important to me. Anyways, I'm looking at this city and these lights and this vertical dominance, and it is an intoxicating thing. And I knew after having a really crappy day of fighting with the computer, trying to get these upload scripts to work, and YouTube authentication and conversion errors and FFmpeg install and blah 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 blah. It was very nice to ride my bike home and then come out here to the promenade and just kind of like stare at the behemoth. And the lights on the Brooklyn Bridge are pretty awesome. So the broadcaster is the thing that's on my mind lately, and I want to figure out a way to tell this story succinctly and efficiently. And maybe that's not totally possible, and there'll always be a long story and a short story, but I'd like to get a nice version of both of those stories. So the short story is add value to a physical location through public documentation, a public documentation appliance, and that's something like a public telephone, and that allows you to keep a YouTube style channel that's a record of, or a Flickr, some photo sharing or video sharing channel that is a record of all the people who've passed through and voluntarily chosen to stand in front of this machine and speak their piece about that physical locale or about whatever was on their mind at the time. So in terms of just thinking about what are a couple dozen concepts for such a device, how would you imagine such a device is used? So one example is I'm doing a residency at Columbia this summer, and the plan is I'm currently working on this thing right now, is to put a broadcaster in the edlab, which is where they do education research, a lot of video production, designing, school of the future type stuff, and then in the library below. But the idea of this device is it's a one-button video booth / phone booth, photo booth sort of installation where you put in a quarter or 50 cents or $1, and then it starts recording and makes a short video and uploads it immediately to a YouTube channel. And so it makes dialogue really fast, the ability to upload something really fast, and then by having this public domain record of the physical space, it builds some history file for that physical space, the same way Linux or Wikipedia has a history file. You can see what came before you and know that whatever you do there is recorded for the next generation, and recorded associated with that place, that physical place. And so that physical place builds value, and the individual citizens can build value too. And so you might have that at a restaurant, so people could give positive reviews to your restaurant. Surely nightclub patrons would want to, be drunk and have their photo or video taken. But even artists or galleries might have one of these things, so every time they have a gallery show, it automatically can broadcast viewers who saw the gallery show and or the curator talking about the gallery show. And this device just sits. You never have to hire a video production crew. You still can if you want a certain quality of video, but the basic quality of video just to get the news out you know, a local news station, a public access news station that really is truly public access. Anyone with a quarter or whatever can come up and put the quarter in and do this in a public space, and then in a private sort of maybe university setting or something like that, then it's just an open system and it's free to use whenever, and that's just a service provided. And so I guess the first step is to step one is this idea of building a couple prototypes, and it should be relatively simple because a lot of people have done this type of thing before. And then the step two would be to convince all the, step two is to, entice other hackers to be interested in it. And step two is to see if you can get some consumer electronics giant or Verizon or somebody to start putting these things out there as well, because it doesn't really matter who puts them out there as long as they broadcast video publicly. Then it's the goal is accomplished, because the end goal of the project says by having more public documentation, we'll be able to govern ourselves and mediate our relationships better. And this would be no different than ants having chemical communication where they leave chemicals so everyone else can see them. And we do this to some degree already with our cell phones, but the difference is the lowering of the cost and the fixing it to a physical location, and this being about the physical locations rather than building walls and giant towers like the city tends to build. This would allow you to build open spaces where there's trust. I think a history file. That's the idea. Other ideas also would be as a video game system, where instead of playing the video game, you're just playing some video effects on you. And so you're giving a little performance, and if you imagine putting these in any sort of creative arts area, especially any low-income area where people don't have other creative outlets at all, and they can't go to classes, but this would allow them to have a communication and a dialogue with the world at large. So I think that would be really powerful. But I think in the end that is just this whole idea of distributed media rather than consolidated media, and you would still have people to produce high quality professional content, but you'd always have a lower level simmering that was all this media, personal media coming out, but personal media associated with physical places. I mean, obviously everyone has their own devices as well, but so, or maybe they don't. I'd like to leave my stuff at home sometimes. The city really is quite an amazing sight. The lights are outrageous. The water doesn't hurt either.